And you're back live with TNSradio.com. Sorry about that, guys. We've got a wee bit of a problem with the bandwidth, I think is maybe happening. So we were talking about time and the technology and hyperchronism and stuff like that. Time bubbles. The time control technology is global, you think? So what about torsion fields? What is the torsion fields?
Well, a torsion field actually, you find it's used in a number of different things, from tokamaks, which are a nuclear fusion magnetic bubble. Basically, it's all a giant magnetic bubble technology. Mm-hmm. The time bubble guys are dealing with the same kind of magnetics that the torsion field people are using to house nuclear fusion, and it's the same kind of view of reality that produces the ability to do room temperature casting of metals, for instance. Mm-hmm. Theoretically, you can get to the point where you address the very energy that bonds together a big pile of titanium powder, and by using dials on a little machine likely, you tell that pile of titanium powder that it's now surrounded by a magnetic field that is going to alter the vibration at which it vibrates, and it'll turn liquid without getting hot. You then pour it into your mold, and you have a seamless room temperature titanium pour. But it's the same technology that's used by Anderson Company and a number of other firms that I'm aware of to muck about with time. And curiously, we find that, the people that are trying to do this, a lot of them have really good ideas. For instance, I know of 2 French firms that are at least participating by putting in money. I don't know if they put in talent yet, with the idea that they would take and be able to create a time bubble around a bit of radioactive waste and accelerate the amount of time stuff that gets into that bubble, such that that waste would decay very rapidly, insofar as the people on the outside of that bubble were aware. This gets into a really strange bit of language, because you start talking about time. You have to be very clear about the terms you're using. We're not talking about time travel, which is an impossibility in my view of the universe, with the idea of this 22 trillion times a second continuous creation and destruction, but rather the idea that you would create a bubble that would allow more time stuff to flow through it, sort of like a selective fish net that only allowed the kind of fish you wanted and actually attracted more of the fish through it. Or else you make a bubble that excludes time. So, for instance, you may want to do some things relatively fast to the view of the outside world. I haven't seen the movie, but as I understand it, in that movie about the blue people, what was the name of that? Avatar. That they grew a body for this fellow to go and inhabit, to shove his consciousness into it. And so they would have done that in some form of a time bubble in order to accelerate the growth to where he didn't die of old age waiting for the body to get mature enough. Make sense?
Kinda, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So there I actually know of a few dozen corporations that are involved in playing with time, and we find these time guys in the U.S. And in the Anglosphere all over, including a curious concentration of them in India. Mm-hmm. And it actually stems, I think, from the language component of the Hind, of the Indian people, and its ability to conceptualize time in various different ways that we don't really see evident in the language of the more mechanistic Teutonic-based English, etc. I mean, I actually think that the language itself expresses the view of the people that live in India that allows them to be very good in the time engineering capabilities, because they're not locked into this idea that the West has, which is erroneous, of time as a river.
Right, okay, yeah. Kinda with you on that one.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're getting there. Now, the metadata gaps, that's set around about the Mayan calendar.
Basically, it could be that. I can get into some technical reasons as to why it could be an artifact of the programming. That still is not 100% ruled out. Uh-huh. But basically the idea is this, that I noticed that when I first started doing this work that the data seemed to fall into 3 broad categories that I was able to identify based on their the length of time before the language started showing up. And so I defined the categories as immediacy data, or short-term data, or long-term data. And the long-term data was way out there. It was from 19 months onward. The short-term data is from 4 months to end of 19 months. And the immediacy data is from today out through the end of 4 months, but really 3 weeks as its most effective area. In any event, though, I ended up with a gap in my data sets that just started occurring, as far as I could tell, naturally, and that gap appears about, in our projection model space, it starts showing up about March 20th or so in 2012, and then doesn't appear to end in terms of a gap until about May of 2013. And I don't have a solid explanation for it. We have some theories, and we're basically running some tests relative to what's going on in the external world. So, for instance, because the data comes on in and basically they're all just words that sort out to archetypes. The archetypes are associated with emotional and or emotional characteristics that provide temporally effective clues. We're able to say that there appears to be something that may impact all of humans or enough of humans that we won't have anything close to the normal level of internet usage that we're enjoying now, and that something may show up in the early part of 2012 and extend all the way through to May of 2013. That is as a statement is an operating assumption that we're working to discredit or refute at the moment.
Sure.
Simply because that's how we have to approach this, is have a postulate and see if we can't disprove it and then find another postulate, etc.
So that would mean then the data gap is not reached until summer, probably 2012.
Summer 2012 proper, yeah. And now, of course, we're getting the warnings from NASA about the solar activity. Plus, we're actually seeing evidence that, you know who Patrick Garrell is?
No, I don't know. No.
Oh, okay. You should research him and get him on your show. He's a Belgian. His last name is Gerryl, G-E-R-Y-L, I believe.
Sure.
And he's written a book on how to survive 2012. And his theory is that basically a quantum level occurrence will arise from the sun, which will cause a molecular pole flip and a magnetic pole flip and a crustal shift of the planet in 2012, which of course would certainly disrupt internet usage, no question about it. If we all go whizzing around at a few hundred miles an hour, everybody's going to get disrupted for a while. But he has some mathematics that are proving themselves out, and we had a recent example of that with the August 1 solar whatever. They still haven't named that event that occurred on August 1. And that was predicted. And of course, the more your theory allows you to make predictions, and the more predictions that arise as a result of your theory being and that actually show up, the more the higher the chance that your theory is accurate. And so one of his predictions is that based on now you have to understand that the sun has this inherent angular momentum problem. And the angular momentum problem is basically that you're standing there, if you're the sun, and you've got a bunch of strings going out from your hands as you spin around. And these strings are various lengths and have weights attached at the various ends. And so the weights are relatively small compared to you. Some of the weights are only 2 or 3 ounces perhaps, but there's a number of them, and they're out at the end of very long strings, and so they still form a lot of angular momentum. And so you're not going to be able to spin yourself around and keep your arms in a nice stable state. And that's actually what's happening to the sun. The sun's equator is being yanked around by the magnetics, by the weight, if you will, the angular momentum imparted by the planets, and the equator of the sun spins faster than its north or south pole. And every 87 days, the equator of the sun takes a lap on that north or south pole. And this induces winding, very much like winding on a ball of yarn. And in our case, the sun has been winding up all these magnetics within itself for just about 26,000 years, and apparently every so often these windings get to the point where the sun just can't take it anymore, and it pops off with this giant shakeout, if you will, of all that inherent magnetic energy, and it causes all kinds of problems for all the planets. And that's in a nutshell, that's Patrick Garrell's theory based on some good understanding he has of the Mayan calendar and a lot of the Mayan text, including those codices that are available to us in Dresden and in Madrid. In any event, though, the theory says that this extra lap that you get by the equator going around faster than the sun, that it takes about 87 days. And that over time you build up a lot of these, and it's like putting too much tension on your ball of yarn. Something's got to give. If Garrell is correct, then we should be able to make some predictions about what's going to happen to the sun relative to these extra windings. And sure enough, he's made some predictions. One of them came true on August 1, and then the next date to look for is 87 days in the future from that, or on or about October 27th or 28th, we should see another solar event that mainstream science will not be able to quite wrap their befuddled little mind around. And if that's the case, then we'll know not only the quantitative elevation in the episode, but also the precise timing. This is key because if one were of an opinion that when the sun does its big whump in 2012, and one was of the opinion that one wanted to go to the effort to try and avoid that, and a way to do that would be to be on the other side of the planet from that whump when it happens, and this will allow you to calculate that.
Right. So basically what we're saying is in 2012 we're going to have major disruption to internet and all other kind of things like internet and radio waves, all this kind of stuff. Correct.
It may be at a minimum, it may be a giant EMP, electromagnetic pulse emanating from a coronal mass ejection that could take down a significant portion of the planetary electrical infrastructure down to the level of local electronics even, correct. At a small level. It could be really nasty in the sense it could be a giant flare-up that actually would have some level of solar stuff coming down through our atmosphere and burning great hunks of the Earth. We just don't know.
But by the collection of your data, though, the good news is that apparently there isn't anything that's going to be termed as life-threatening in 2012.